The cheers echoed like waves crashing against the walls of the auditorium. Families wept with pride. Cameras clicked as students crossed the stage, clutching their diplomas and hearts full of hope. Michael adjusted his cap, scanning the ocean of faces. His chest swelled with anticipation, searching for that one familiar corner where his family was supposed to be sitting. But all he saw were empty seats. Front row, premium seats, $22,000 worth, marked with custom place cards, Mom, Uncle Ray, Aunt Sheila, Cousin David. All untouched. The air felt colder than the AC suggested. His name echoed through the speakers, Dr. Michael Harrison, MD. The crowd applauded. Michael took a deep breath, stepped forward, shook hands, and forced a smile for the camera. But inside? He was collapsing. Just as he exited the stage, his phone buzzed in his gown pocket. He slid it out discreetly, thinking, maybe a "we're running late" message? Instead, a photo popped up in the family group chat. Blue skies. White buildings. Clinking glasses. His family, smiling wide, standing on a cliffside in Greece. A cocktail in his mother's hand. His uncle's caption underneath. Now this is a celebration worth flying out for. Michael blinked. His heart pounded like a drum solo. He swiped again. A message followed. Uncle Ray, you're not even a real doctor. For years of books? That's not surgery. Let's celebrate when you actually save a life. Michael couldn't breathe. Not because of anger, but because of how familiar this felt. That deep, dull ache of disappointment. The feeling of being invisible. Of trying so hard for people who never clapped when he won. He had done everything, worked overnight shifts, juggled student loans, kept his head down. And now, in the moment he needed them most, they were sipping wine in Santorini. He wanted to scream. To throw his cap off the rooftop. But instead, he sat in the hallway behind the auditorium, surrounded by discarded robes and empty coffee cups. No hugs. No flowers. No "we're proud of you, son." A fellow student walked by, waving with joy. Hey, congrats, Doc. Your family's here? Michael looked up slowly, masking his pain with a slight nod. They're around. She beamed and hurried off. And there he sat. Alone. A newly minted doctor, with a $22,000 hole in his pocket and a heart shattered by the people he thought would be clapping in the front row. But that was the moment something inside him shifted. Not out of rage. But clarity. The kind that comes when you finally stop begging people to value you. Because if they wouldn't show up when you reached the top, maybe they never belonged in the climb at all. Michael sat on the edge of his dorm bed, still in his graduation gown. The hallway noise had died down, replaced by soft jazz from a radio somewhere and the occasional honk outside. He stared at the glowing screen of his phone, the picture of his family on a yacht, laughing, carefree. They looked like people without a son who just became a doctor. He tapped open his bank app. $22,048. That's what it cost to fly them out. First-class tickets, because his mom said she had back problems. A 5-star hotel, because Uncle Ray was too old for errands. Group dinners, matching outfits, even a custom Harrison Strong banner he had printed for the celebration dinner they promised they'd attend. All of it booked. All of it prepaid. And not one of them showed up. What hurt more than the money was the fact that this wasn't new. Michael had grown up being the invisible one. The quiet kid. His cousins were louder, flashier. His achievements were always cute, never impressive. When he got a full ride to med school, his mom told people he got lucky. When he published a research paper, his uncle called it fancy typing. He remembered a phone call from 3 weeks ago. His mom's voice, sweet and assuring. "We wouldn't miss it for the world, honey. Your uncle's even ordering a custom shirt that says, 'My nephew is a doctor.' Isn't that funny?" He had laughed. Felt warm. But it was a lie. And what burned deeper than anything was this: it wasn't that they couldn't come. They chose not to. They had the time. They had the tickets. But they had other priorities. A Greek vacation. Michael leaned back against the wall, his diploma tucked beside him. Not even framed yet. He thought back to the moment he decided to go into medicine, not for the money, but to heal people. To make his family proud. He thought being a doctor would finally get him the applause he never got as a kid. He imagined coming off that stage and being smothered in hugs, tears, laughter. His mom saying, "You did it, baby. We knew you could." Instead, she was sipping ouzo in a sundress while her son crossed a stage alone. Michael realized something brutal that night. No matter how much you achieve, you can't force people to see your worth, especially when they're too busy looking in the mirror to notice anyone else. He looked down at the family photo again. The betrayal was so clean, so sharp, it almost looked surgical. This wasn't just a missed event. This was abandonment, wrapped in a postcard from paradise. Michael hadn't always been strong. In fact, growing up in rural Ohio, he'd always been the quiet one. The helper. The kid who stayed behind to clean up dinner, who fixed his cousin's science projects, who handed over his Halloween candy just to stop the bickering. He didn't know how to fight for himself, because he was too busy fighting for their attention. He was raised in a household where love had conditions. You had to be loud to be seen, funny to be liked, rebellious to be respected. Michael? He was soft-spoken. Gentle. The one who brought home straight A's, stayed out of trouble, and got brushed aside because, well, Michael's always fine. But he wasn't. He remembered the way his mom used to praise his cousin David for hitting a home run, throwing a huge barbecue for the whole family. When Michael got into the gifted program, she'd said, "Well, let's hope that doesn't make you weird." That was the first time he learned being smart wasn't always something people clapped for. At 13, he stayed up all night to fix Uncle Ray's computer. No thank you. No acknowledgement. Just a gruff good. Now I can work again. At 15, he won the regional science fair. His aunt rolled her eyes and said, "Must be nice to not have a life." Michael learned to expect silence where pride should be. Indifference where love should live. So when he got into med school, he thought this would change everything. He imagined a clean slate. Finally, he would be someone worth noticing. He worked night shifts as a janitor while studying. He skipped birthdays, gave up holidays, even missed his own graduation from undergrad because he couldn't afford the travel. But he told himself it would all be worth it, once they saw Dr. Michael Harrison printed in ink. He imagined surprising his mom with a trip to Paris. He dreamed of sending his uncle a framed article when his research got published in a top medical journal. He wanted to be the reason his family walked taller. But deep down, he wasn't chasing achievement. He was chasing love that had always been just out of reach. That's what made the graduation betrayal cut so deeply. It confirmed what he had always feared, that no matter how high he climbed, they were never looking up. As he sat alone with his untouched celebration cake, a rich chocolate mousse from his favorite bakery, he stared at the small note he had written in it for his mom. "We did it, Mom." But she wasn't there to read it. No one was. He was a boy who had spent his whole life trying to prove he was enough. And maybe, just maybe, it was time he stopped trying. Michael sat alone in his tiny apartment, surrounded by unopened party favors, untouched snacks, and silence so loud it pressed against his chest. His graduation robe hung neatly over a chair, untouched. The moment that was supposed to be the peak of his life, the moment he imagined for years, had come and gone. And no one had shown up. The photos of his family posing under the Santorini sunset were all over social media. His mom in a wide-brimmed hat holding a mimosa. His sister lounging by an infinity pool, captioned, "Living our best life." His Uncle Ray commented, "This beats any boring graduation." That one stung. But it was the text from Uncle Ray that finally broke something in him. "You're not even a real doctor. Just more student debt and no job." He read it 5 times before placing his phone down. Michael didn't cry. He didn't scream. He didn't even respond. He just stood up, walked over to the counter, and stared at the envelope containing his degree. His name printed in gold. His hard work, his sleepless nights, his lonely path, all captured on a single piece of paper that meant everything to him and nothing to them. And then something inside him shifted. For the first time in years, he stopped asking why they didn't care. He started asking why he still did. He pulled out a legal-sized envelope. Inside it, he placed a copy of the $22,000 invoice from the travel agency, the money he had spent on their first-class flights, hotel bookings, and customized graduation invites. It was his gift to them. His way of saying, "Come celebrate this moment with me." But now? It was his way of saying, "This was the cost of your absence." Then, gently, almost ceremoniously, he added a copy of his degree to the envelope. And below it, a single sticky note: "Since you didn't make it, here's what you missed. Enjoy Santorini." He addressed it to his mother and added a return receipt request. He wanted to know exactly when it landed in her hands. He mailed it the next morning. By the time he returned home, his phone had already buzzed 11 times. All missed calls from Mom. He didn't pick up. Instead, he opened his laptop and began updating his resume. He applied to hospitals out of state. Places far from Ohio. Far from obligation. Far from people who never saw him for who he really was. That day, Michael made a silent vow. He would stop spending his life proving his worth to people who never earned the right to question it. He would build a new life. Not to impress them, but to finally free himself from them. Michael didn't say a word, not to his mother, not to his uncle, not to anyone. And that silence? It hit harder than any angry outburst ever could. His mom called. Again. And again. And again. She left voice messages filled with confused panic. "Michael, what is this invoice? Is this a joke? Why did you send your degree in the mail? What is going on? This isn't funny, sweetheart. Call me back." But Michael stayed quiet. No texts. No explanations. No reassurances. For the first time in his life, he wasn't chasing after their comfort. He wasn't rushing to ease their confusion. He let them sit in it. Let them feel what it was like to be ignored, forgotten, just like they made him feel on the most important day of his life. Uncle Ray, the same man who once mocked his education, sent him a long-winded email full of backpedaling. "You know I was just joking, right? Come on, Mikey. I've always supported you. Don't take things so seriously." Michael didn't even open the rest. Instead, he kept applying for residencies in California, Colorado, and Maine, anywhere far away from the judgment and the fake smiles. He sent out thank you letters to professors who had mentored him, nurses who believed in him, and even the janitor at his med school who once brought him coffee during an all-night study shift. Those people saw him. Respected him. That's who deserved his time now. The final blow came 2 weeks later. His mom showed up, uninvited, outside his apartment building. She was holding the degree in one hand and the invoice in the other. Her face was pale, not from guilt alone, but from the realization that something had shifted. That her son, the one who always forgave, always reached out first, had finally stopped. "Michael," she said as he opened the door, her voice trembling. This is cruel. You know I didn't mean to hurt you." He looked at her, really looked at her. "I know you didn't mean to," he said calmly. "But you did." She started crying. She reached for him, but he stepped back. "I needed you once," he continued. "I invited you. I made room for you in my proudest moment. You chose a beach over me. Now, I'm choosing peace over you." Her lip quivered. "So, what? You're cutting us off?" Michael didn't answer with words. He just gently took the envelope from her hand, walked back inside, and closed the door without slamming it. That silence? It was his revenge. Not petty. Not loud. But permanent. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stop explaining yourself to people who never truly listened in the first place. Weeks turned into months, and for the first time ever, Michael's phone stayed quiet, not because no one was calling, but because he stopped picking up. He changed his number. He moved across the country to a hospital in Portland, Maine, got a small apartment overlooking the harbor, started working 12-hour shifts, and built a routine that didn't involve waiting for validation. He finally had peace. And back home, that silence became deafening. His mother kept sending letters, pages filled with half-apologies and sentimental guilt. I was stressed. I didn't think it mattered so much. We didn't know how hard it was for you. Each word was soaked in regret, but none of it erased the pain of being abandoned when it mattered most. Uncle Ray tried a different tactic. He bragged online about Michael being the first doctor in the family like he hadn't once texted "You're not even a real doctor." Michael saw the post through a mutual friend and rolled his eyes. Too little, too late. Then came the real kicker. A family friend, Mrs. Patterson, called the hospital front desk looking for him. She was an old neighbor, someone who used to bake him cookies during finals. She told the receptionist that Michael's parents were worried sick, that they missed their boy, and were ready to make things right. The receptionist politely informed her, "Dr. Michael Reed does not accept personal calls during work hours." Mrs. Patterson left a message anyway, but Michael never returned it. His silence had become their karma. Because now, they knew what it felt like to be invisible. Now, they wanted back into a life they didn't bother showing up for when it counted. They missed the white coat ceremony. They missed the photo where he stood in front of the hospital sign, holding up his ID badge like it was a trophy. They missed the first patient he saved. They missed it all. And that was the cost. The family tried everything. Birthday cards. Holiday texts. Even gifts mailed to the hospital. But Michael didn't respond. Because they weren't there for the struggle, they didn't earn the right to celebrate the success. One snowy night, as Michael walked home from the hospital, a coworker asked, "Hey, Dr. Reed, you ever going back home for the holidays?" Michael smiled softly, shook his head. "Nah," he said. "Home's where people show up for you. I'm already there." In that moment, he felt it, freedom. The kind that doesn't come from revenge or proving people wrong. It comes from choosing yourself, even when they didn't. And that, more than any degree or title, was the most powerful thing he'd ever earned. It had been over a year since Michael left Ohio. A year of silence. A year of success. A year of freedom. Every day in Maine felt like a new beginning, one he built brick by brick, far from the ghosts of his past. He had no intention of going back. No plans of reconciliation. He had moved on, and with each day, the weight of their absence felt lighter. But then, on a cold December evening, there was a knock at his door. Michael froze, holding the freshly prepared dinner in his hand, a quick meal before another long shift. The knock wasn't urgent, but something in it made his heart skip. He placed the plate down and walked slowly to the door, his mind racing. It couldn't be them. They wouldn't have the audacity, would they? But there they were. His mother, father, and Uncle Ray. All standing at his doorstep, with sheepish expressions on their faces. His mom looked like she hadn't slept in days, her eyes were red, puffy, and tired. His dad, usually the strong one, seemed almost frail in this moment. Uncle Ray, too, looked uncomfortable, his usual smug demeanor was gone, replaced with guilt. Michael didn't speak. He didn't ask why they were there. He didn't even acknowledge them with a greeting. He just stood there, the door slightly cracked, the cold night air pushing into his apartment. "Michael," his mother started, her voice shaky. We made a mistake. We should have been there for you. We know that now." Uncle Ray cleared his throat, his voice low. "You worked hard. Too hard for us to just dismiss it all. We were wrong. I was wrong." Michael looked at them, and for the first time in over a year, he felt a flicker of something small but undeniable. Maybe it was relief, maybe it was anger, or maybe it was both. But more than that, he felt the weight of how much had changed in such a short time. "I'm sorry, Mike," his father said, his tone soft, almost pleading. "We didn't understand how much this meant to you, how much you meant to us." Michael could have slammed the door. Could have thrown every insult he had in his arsenal at them. Could have told them how they'd ignored his phone calls, how they didn't deserve to be in his life. But he didn't. He stood there, looking at the family who had once left him behind, now standing in front of him, vulnerable and regretful. There was no satisfaction in their pain. No joy in seeing them grovel. Instead, he closed the door slightly and said, "You can't just walk back in. You can't just undo all the years I spent trying to prove my worth to you." His mom's hand rested on the doorframe, tears pooling in her eyes. "Please, Michael, we know we messed up. We just want to make it right." He could feel their desperation, their sorrow. But he wasn't sure they'd earned the right to be a part of his life again. "I'm sorry," Michael said, his voice steady but distant. "But sometimes, what's broken can't be fixed." His mom looked at him, searching his face for any sign of the son she once knew, the son who had forgiven them time and time again. But all she saw was the man he had become, strong, independent, and finally free of the burden they'd put on him. "I hope you understand," he added quietly, and with that, he closed the door. As the sound of their footsteps faded down the hall, Michael didn't feel anger. He didn't feel bitterness. He didn't feel anything. It was done. For once, Michael didn't need to explain. He didn't need to justify his decisions. They had left him long ago, and now he was the one walking away. And this time? He wasn't looking back. Weeks passed since that night. The holidays came and went, but this time, Michael was no longer waiting for a call or a message from his parents. He didn't need it. He had everything he needed right where he was: peace, clarity, and the quiet affirmation that he had made the right choice. He woke up every morning without the anxiety of wondering if he was enough. No longer did he question his worth, wondering if he was worthy of the love and recognition of his family. He had found validation within himself, in his accomplishments, in the life he built on his own terms. The hospital had become a place of pride, not just a job. Each life he saved, each patient he treated, was a victory not only for them, but for him as well. Every surgical success was another step further away from the toxicity of his past. The respect he earned in the medical community wasn't something handed to him because of who his parents were, it was something he'd earned with his own hands, his own dedication. One evening, as he sat alone in his apartment, overlooking the harbor, sipping a glass of wine after another long shift, Michael reflected on how far he'd come. He had learned that family wasn't about shared blood or holiday dinners. Family was the people who had stood by him through thick and thin. People like Dr. Thompson, his mentor, who had treated him like a son. People like Ellie, the nurse who had become his closest friend, offering him the support he had never known from his own relatives. He smiled to himself, feeling a warmth that hadn't been there for years. The people who had loved him, respected him, and supported him were not the ones who'd turned their back on him, but the ones who chose him over and over again. His family was now the friends he had made, the colleagues who trusted him, and the patients who saw him as more than just a doctor. They saw him as Michael, a man who had worked tirelessly to build a future. Michael's thoughts were interrupted by a text message from Ellie, celebrating tonight. "You in?" Without hesitation, he replied, "Wouldn't miss it." He grabbed his coat and headed out, leaving behind the apartment that had been his sanctuary, but knowing he was no longer running from anything. He was moving forward, to better days, to true connections, and to a future that was his to shape. There was no more looking back. His past was behind him, a closed chapter, and the life ahead was waiting for him. As he stepped outside into the crisp winter air, the streetlights reflecting off the snow, he couldn't help but feel a sense of liberation. He was free. Free from the guilt, free from the expectations, free from the shame that had once defined him. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about Michael Reed, the man who had made it on his own, against all odds. And that was enough. As he walked towards the celebration, the city lights twinkling in the distance, he couldn't help but think of the people who once doubted him, who had tried to hold him back. They had no idea what they were missing. And Michael? He was done waiting for their approval. He had found his peace. And it felt more like home than anything they ever could have offered.